Welcome back to Naval Action. This is the April edition of Scuttlebutt. So Scuttlebutt is a monthly series that I'm doing. I pretty much cover what's going on in the game. I try and pick up on the recent changes to the game. It's early access, as we all know, so there's lots going on. And there's been heaps going on really in the last month. So since I did the first edition of this 4 weeks ago, we had a mini patch probably a fortnight ago now, where they dropped in the Ingerman land. I can't pronounce either of the two new ships they put in, which is kind of a fourth-rate Connie alternative. And the first deep water trader, which is La Grosse Venture or some such thing, 4,200 ton deep water trader, and I'll be doing videos on those in the near future, so we should be able to get a better look at those in a bit more detail. However, we've just received the big patch, land sighted 9.7 I think it is, and I have to say I was kind of expecting the fact that they've now added in the what I call contextual battles, where if I was to have a battle here, it would drag in all this scenery dynamically from around me. Which would be very nice, and they've done that, and it is delicious. I have to be a little bit honest, it's harder to get a fight nearer the shore now. If you're in these green areas, you can't start a fight at all. You have to wait until you get outside of those green areas, so it stops people sitting on your nose and picking a fight inside the protected area. What have they done then? So they've done that. They've dragged in the land battles, and it looks really nice. I'll do an example vid of one of those in the near future. It's, for me, it's not having a big. I've been in 2 or 3 fights now with the dynamic scenery, and it hasn't caused me any horrors when it comes to FPS. I haven't got the world's most amazing gaming rig. I've got a good gaming rig, I'd say. I've got plenty of memory. I've got 16 gigabobs of memory. So that's been good. The same hasn't been done for port battles. That's still running on the old engine, so you won't get that into port battles. I'm rather hoping that's in the next release. They've not given us too many clues on the next release. They do hold polls where they ask people what sort of things you want to focus on, so you can find those in their forums, in the official forums. I don't think they hold the equivalent ones in the Steam forums, so you'd have to go snuffling around in the Games Labs forums. And to be honest, if they'd have just done that, and they'd have done, I know they sort of touted just before the release they were looking at duels. So duels is something you can go into any port, go into the missions tab, pick a duel, and it will queue you to fight a ship at the moment of exactly the same class. So I'm in a Connie, I would only be matched up against a Connie. It doesn't care, it doesn't match up a gold Connie with a grey Connie, it doesn't know the difference, so you could be sitting there in a live oak, planking, reinforced rudder, reinforced masts, and you could be up against some poor fool like myself in a grey NPC pile of pants Connie. But what you can do is you can go in there, you queue up, it tells you if there's any matches. If there is a match, it literally just takes seconds, and you go into a one-on battle. You start lined up against each other within broadside range with your guns unloaded, and kick off the biff. And I have to say, I love it. I've done a few duels. I did one with a mate where we were chatting to each other over the TeamSpeak. We had slightly different ships. It was quite interesting. And we both got down to the winning ship had, I would say, 5% more health than the losing ship. It's a great way of learning because it's free. There's no durability loss. The only thing you probably lose is if you choose to use a repair kit. You don't gain anything, there's no XP, there's no loot, there's no gold, there's not even a ranking table at the moment. Now a lot of the purists, oh, I don't like duels, there wasn't duels in the real world. It's true, but I'm a big fan of the mini-games. I didn't do much PvP, for example, back in WoW, but the arena mini-game in WoW was super popular. Naval action is a game that to do a session you need to really put a couple of hours aside and really get stuck into it. This allows me to drop in, I've got 25 minutes, the missus is in the shower, we're about to go out, I've got 25 minutes, I could either do the dishes or play some naval action. In the past I had to do the dishes because it would take me 2 hours to do naval action. But now I can play naval action, I can jump into a duel and have a biff. At the moment, there's not that many people typically in the queues, so I would probably recommend spamming in global or Brit chat or arranging with your clan to basically say, anybody want a duel in a connie? I'm queued, and hopefully you'd get yourself a bit of biff. Great fun thing to do with a mate. Great fun way to learn how to do different things with your ships. And when you play the better players, which is almost always the case for me, you can see all the tricks they do where they depower their sails to give themselves a nice stable gunboat, how they lean their ship so that they're exposing less of their hull and you're exposing more of your hull and all that sort of good stuff. So, big fan of the duels. I don't care if it's not reflective of a simulator. It's a great mini game. It's a free way for me to learn, and it's a bit of fun I can have with a mate for 25 minutes or a complete stranger, and that's always good. So that's duels. They've added duels. You can see duels there, by the way, in the missions, ship duels. The other thing they've done is you can now request an order any level at all below you, and I think one level above you. So you can request any level order now, and you can also do fleet orders now. Fleet orders, I'll be doing a video on this. Fleet orders are just brilliant fun. So you can request a fleet order here. I've got a couple already loaded. I'd strongly recommend you start off doing a baby fleet order, take one a couple of levels below you. It's about an 8 on 8. It depends, you can do them in groups, so you and a bunch of mates can go in and do them in groups, which is great fun. I suppose if you're in a group of 12, which you can do now, they've upped the group size to 12. If you're in a group of 12, you'll be matched. And what it does is it kind of does a BR matching. I think it gives the AI a slight advantage. I've done a couple, and they seem to have a couple of better ships than you, but they are AI, so they're derpa. But it's very challenging. It is very challenging, and unlike missions that become a cakewalk, you bang your carronades on, you go out there and you just biff the pants off the AI. These fleet missions, you can lose your ship. I'm going to definitely do a video on these things. They're ace fun. And if you've got 3 or 4 buds, maybe clannies, or if you can rustle up, I would say always go in with 2 or 3 friendlies. You can go in alone if you're really good. I'd recommend longs. But the fleet missions and being able to choose any mission you want, ding, A+, fantastic with that one. One of the other things they've changed is when you tag an enemy now. So there was always, it was important that if you tagged an enemy like this and you wanted to attack him, that you positioned yourself well in the circle. Well, that's honoured a lot more, and if there's 2 or 3 of you in your group, each of you will hold your retrospective position. You'll see there's a little circle, you might be able to see that just around my target. In fact, do I see it on myself? No, I don't see it on myself. That is, I'm going to call that the zone of doubt. And if you bring your ship inside that circle, what they're saying is because of the lag, and I'm in Australia, so my lag is about 3 days. I think I run at 400 milliseconds, something horrendous like that, so that's my excuse for losing in duels. There you go, 405 milliseconds. What it says is if you are inside that little baby circle when you tag someone, it won't honour the position because there's a certain amount of lag balancing that has to take place. Perhaps one of the most contentious and interesting changes is they've tried to modify the ganking rules, or the rules of open sea battles. So what they've said is now if I was to attack this ship and the big circle would appear around it, if I had 3 mates with me, when I do the attack, we all go in. Nothing changes. If I've got 1,000 battle rating and he's got 5 battle rating, Well, there's a rule that means super big ships can't attack little ships, but fundamentally, as long as you're not more than 5 to 1, or whatever the rule is, I think it's 5 to 1, or transversely, you're not less than 1 in 5, you can tag. So it stops me and my Connie tagging a cutter, because I'm worth whatever it is, 400 BR, and he's worth 10 BR. But basically, if I'm in my Connie and 10 trinks appeared, or 5 trinks appeared, they could tag me. But what they've said is, if you're not in the circle when the battle commences, you can now only enter the battle if you don't bring the battle rating over 1.5. So simple is, if it's me and my mate and it's 2 Connies against 2 Connies, we both go in. 2 more Connies could join the fight, but not 3 more Connies, because that would raise the, in fact 1 more Connie, sorry, could join the fight, but not 2 more Connies. So what that says is you need to be in close formation when you're attacking, or equally if you're meant to be sailing together and you want to help each other out, you need to try and be in that circle when the cap happens. Now this is all a bit difficult, because I don't think there's a right way of doing this. If I'm in my victory and 4 trinks jump me, my mate and his Pavel was outside of the circle, he won't be able to come in because he'd push the battle rating over the top. So what that says is, if you're in a defensive fleet, if you're in a group, you better sail close. If the enemy has got 5 trinks and a renome, and they chase you down with the renome, the trinks, and you're in a renome, the trinks aren't going to be able to join. Now we can talk about real life as much as you want, but this is a game balance mechanic. In real life, you'd see a ship on the sail maximum about 10 kilometers, because that's just how stuff works. You would run away if there was more sails and you could identify them as more sails. You would run away. They would catch you, typically, unless there was a real big speed differential, at about 0.2 knots an hour. Right? It would take 4 days to hunt an enemy down, and then when you caught them, they would almost always surrender, because who wants to die? And dying would be 100% guaranteed the outcome of 4 trinks catching 1 trink. So in real life, people ran away. It's important to note that at the moment, there's more battles in a day on PvP1 than there were in the history of the Golden Age of Sail. So let's not be too precious about real life. What the developers are trying to do here is come up with a way of balancing combat. You can still engineer a tactical advantage where you're going to win because you've brought more cannons to bear than your opponent. But at the same time, they're trying to reduce the fact that one renome runs ahead, tags a ship, and then 10 times the BR piles in on top of you. Now I think this will get changed. I think they'll fiddle around with the rules. There's all sorts of variants out there, but if you think about the number of scenarios, it's probably impossible to come up with a single coding rule that makes this fair. If I'm in a fleet of 50 ships and a little ship comes up, it's not going to stop me. It's not going to stop me. I would just ignore it and sail on, or we'd all just poop out the window. The other bizarre mechanics is I'm on open world now, and I'm super fast travelling. It's like Inception. As soon as I go into an actual battle, I slow down to real time. So in theory, if someone is 3 times the circle away from me, that 2 minutes away from me, in actual fact they're a couple of hours sailing away from me in battle mode. So I would deal with the renome, and then I'd run away again. So let's be careful about real life. So I think this will change a bit. I think we're in early access, and they've said in their release notes, we're testing this, guys. Give it a couple of weeks, see how it works out. If it's utterly game breaking, they'll fix it. One of the things that has happened that I've liked with this game, which is why I stick with this game, which is why I put hundreds of hours into this game, is that the devs seem to have the balance right between not knee-jerking to the salt, vinegar and QQ in the forums, but at the same time listening to the general community and adjusting the game. And I get the impression, they want the game to be improved as much as we do. So chill a bit, I know when you play the game every day and you invest hundreds of hours into it, it feels like it's the end of the world when someone changes something about the game. But fundamentally, these guys are doing their best. They're testing different mechanics out, and we'll see how we go. So I've just jumped into a mission. You'll notice a couple of things. First of all, the enemy ship is in a different postcode. You start much farther apart now in missions. And my cannons are unloaded, so that's interesting. So what I typically do now is I unfurl my sails. Once I've got my sails fully down, I'm going to flip my guys off sailing, so I can get more guys onto guns, because what you're doing is you're doing what you never want to do, and you're loading all cannons at once. And they've done some tuning on that too. You can actually go to a deck, press F5, you can still fire that deck, but now it won't reload. So if I know I'm going to fire a broadside from here, and then for the rest of the battle I'm really going to use this side because it's leaning into the wind, exposing less of my hull. That's what I can do. I can fire that one off, and effectively by pressing F5 I'm telling them not to reload it. I'm turning off that side of my gun deck. So that's good. All right. So I've got one side reloaded, so I'm going to go back onto sailing now. They've added the mortar brig. I don't see much point to the mortar brig right now. The mortar brig is a ship that fires mortars. The mortars do colossal damage. They have a minimum fire range of 1.5 kilometers, minimum, and the target you're aiming at pretty much has to be stationary. So they might be good for taking towers down, perhaps in the near future, or fortifications if we ever come up against fortifications. That might be a thing, but at the moment, other than maybe doing a fireworks display, I'm not seeing much use for the mortar brig. They've added large NPC fleets, and these large NPC fleets are bazookas. They are enormous. They are. I saw a fleet yesterday with 6 victories, 6 Santamissonas, 9 Pavels, and I think it was 6 third rates. It was genuinely a dread fleet. I don't think there was a clan on the server at the time that would have had the same firepower. Well, I think there's one, but that would have been about it that this fleet was doing. But they're mental, and who knows if we'll ever get to the stage where we've got first rates with their 1 durability taking on those things. The interesting thing is if someone's trying to tag you and you run into one of those fleets of your own nation, peskies, then what that will mean is that the enemy will now be up against the world's most frightening fleet. So remember that if you're ever being chased in your own waters. Run towards a dread fleet. You can even tag AI into a dread fleet. That'd be good fun. So I've spoken about the new missions, and the fleet missions, honestly, they are, for me, they're the best surprise of the release. I love it. They are huge fun. They do take about an hour. I'll be doing a video on those things. They are just great fun, man. I do think you should be able to take more missions than you can at the moment. I also notice I can't take a single mission from, say, Carlisle and a fleet mission from Carlisle of the same type, and that's a bit pesky. Some of the other interesting things that make huge difference, they've modified the leak system. So if, let me see if I can get my ship. My ship's leaning up here. You'll see it's leaning up. If he was to hit me very low here, see the red is showing? That would almost definitely cause a leak. And repairing the leak now takes a lot more effort. I think it's a bit bugged at the moment. It takes crazy bonkers amount of effort. I know they did a hotfix straight after release last night. I've not seen anything that tells us what that hotfix did. I don't know if they've fixed the leaks, but I was in a mission like this, and I was in a mission like this. This is the thing now, you aim very low because you're trying to do leaks, and then you just kill fish. And I was up against Jacques Le Prick, And he rammed me, as this guy looks like he's about to do. He just rammed me, and within 45 seconds I was sunk. I had 300 men on survival. I had emergency repairs and repairs going. I had no one left on cannons or sails, bucket cannons or sails. I could have filled the gap with my guys on sails, on repairs. To be honest, there were so many guys on repairs. I could have filled the gap. Now people say, "Oh, don't get rammed, Jeheil. You know, if you get rammed, it causes huge big holes in your ship." Well, actually, it doesn't. If you do a bit of research, in the age of sail, ramming wasn't a thing. Ships didn't get fast enough to do damage. Hull integrity was actually quite good. And ramming with the front of your ship into the side of the ship was suicide. If you want to do ramming, you have to go back to the triremes of Roman, Chinese, Egyptian and Greek days, where they were all powered, and the integrity of the port and broadside of the ship, the sides of the ship, was rubbish. Whereas many of them were open ships, they weren't even decked. But it was rubbish. So don't give me this, don't get ram malarkey, you'll die. It's very, very hard to sink a ship if we're doing real life. And I didn't have any choice about getting rammed. The AI shaped up on a broadside and then just swung in and rammed me. It was an oblique angle, and I sank in 40 seconds. I was in a Connie with 4,500 integrity armour on my sides. He was in a frigate, I think. So it needs fixing. However, I do like the idea that if your ship is exposing hull, maybe it's the waves that do it, or it's the lean of your ship. So think about trinks, they lean terribly. Then sticking cannons in below the waterline causes a leak that needs more attention, and I'm all for that. I think that's great. It's like accurate damage modelling, or more accurate damage modelling. So I think that's good. They just need to tune it a little bit, and I know they will tune it a little bit, because that's just what they do. They've tuned everything. The other thing they've done, which for me is a bit of a ninja change, I think, is the AI is a bit better. It seems to be more accurate. It seems to do things like stern rake you. It tags you when you're running away. So that's interesting. I didn't expect that. And the other thing they've said they've done, and it's one of these little throwaway lines in the patch notes, it's like line 87. The patch notes were put out before the release, that was great, is that they've improved penetration. Lots of jokes there, but anyway, they've improved penetration. And I'm not sure the word I would use is improve. I think everything penetrates at the moment. I was up against a ship using 6-pound shot mediums, I'd imagine. You can tell a little bit by looking at the gunnels, but they didn't look like longs or carronades. It was AI, and everything was penetrating. And that was a bit upsetting for me and the lads, because I was effectively doing a mission that, for all intents and purposes, was a couple of levels lower than me, and I was up against a ship that, for all intents and purposes, was a rate lower than me. And mediums, all of a sudden, are the new meta because they seem to penetrate as much as longs, but obviously reload quicker and require less crew, so that's a bit of a worry. As I've said, they've increased group size to 12 now. That's a good start. I'd like to see that move on. The same with the duels, I think the duels is a great start. I'd love to see 1v1, 2v2, 3v3, BR divisions, leaderboards, maybe seasonal 1-month seasons, and the winner gets a gold upgrade, or the second person gets a blue upgrade, or whatever. I've got no problem with that at all. Like I say, it makes the drop-in game a lot more fun. One of the other things they've done, which is interesting, is that if you've got a BP, it won't drop again. Now, I'm a bit. This is probably one of my least. Oh my god, why am I likely? This is probably one of my least favourite things. I think getting that BP drop, which typically you're making exceptionals for, which are really expensive and always cost more to build than they do to sell. getting a BP, getting a blueprint, it was like a bit like winning lotto. It gave you that extra income of selling it. Whereas now, if you already know the BP, it won't drop again. Now, I don't know what no means. I don't know if it's dropped, then I know it, or if I've learned it, I know it. So, for example, I'm doing exceptional frigates at the moment. If I got a Trink BP, could I sell it and another one would drop? Or if I learn it, then I think that means obviously it'll never drop again. But I don't really like that. Now, perhaps the number one contentious change of the patch is you can't cap AI ships anymore and keep them. So historically, I might be doing some biffing tonight, and I think, well, I'd like to take a frigate to the biff. So I would cap this frigate, and I'd then send it to one of my ports. Well, you can't do that anymore. You now can only, well, you can only cap traders. If you cap, well, you can cap the ship, but then it automatically gets sent back to the Admiralty. So this is super interesting, right? Because what this means is that all those port battles that you see with all the big clans, well, they were ruled by third rates, typically. So they were ruled by third rates. And now they won't be. The third rates are no longer the easy ships, you have to make them. And this will have a huge effect on a couple of things. It'll have a huge effect on the sort of exhaustion factor of clan wars, of port battles. So if you're on the losing side in a port battle and your clan loses 20 first, second and third rates, you get a spanking. That's 60 days worth of crafting that you've just got to redo. Well, not really, because crafting ships have got dual ability, but you know what I mean? It makes the cost of losing. Oh, there you go, there's a leak, and I've got 34 people needed for that leak. Holy moly. Yeah, so that has a big effect on the way we do the exhaustion aspect, I suppose, of clan battles. The other thing is, it really raises the need for crafters. And the direction of the developers has seemed to really been focusing on improving the need for player built content, be that trading or so on and so forth. So I think as a trader I say woohoo. As a PvPer I say boo. And as a pirate I say because pirates say that to everything. It does mean pirates almost have to be an economy to themselves. They won't be able to just rely on capping ships anymore. And that's an interesting thing in itself. So we'll see how that goes. I'm a bit interested in that. I'm not sure how that one's going to play out. I mean, some other options would be that you could only cap up to a Bellona. Because now they've got these big fleets out there, they don't want you capping Santis every 5 minutes. But maybe you could only cap up to, I don't know, a frigate or something. Or maybe you could cap a finite number of ships, a quota of ships, and then your Admiralty demands the rest because, you're working for the king. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. It's already pushed the crafting market up. I had a couple of frigates sitting there for a few days. No one was interested in them. They both sold in the last 5 hours. So that's good. That's more money. What else have they done? So they've added more NPC ships. So they've added more of the sort of frigate type ships into the shops. So that's good. They've added some more graphical options. FXA can now be properly turned off without it turning itself back on every few seconds. Clan officers now have a bit more control. They can kick and recruit. Cannons will now tell you as you're fitting cannons, they'll tell you the impact they're having on your speed, so that's really good. A lot of people, you get a ship and on the tin it says it can do 12.5, and then you fit a bunch of carronades and your top speed's 11.2, and all of a sudden your plans for being the speed scourge of the game all falls to pieces, so that's a little bit interesting. And I think that's most of it. There's a lot of little changes they've made, some minor bugs that have been fixed, hammocks have been improved. And of course, probably the other thing that they've done, oh, pardon me, probably the other thing they've done that's a big change for the players in the game, but perhaps not one anyone joining the game will notice, is they've really reduced the grind, the XP you need to get from a ship. I jumped from being a post captain who was probably 25%, 75% of the way to being a flag captain, to actually, with a bit of play over the last day or so, I'm now I'm at the next level now. I've made it up a couple of levels, so I'm Commodore El Presidente, which is good. I like the El Presidente. The negative side of that, a little bit, is obviously the people who've worked their way up, they always feel as though they've been ripped off, you know, everybody's getting welfare ships now because they just get an insta-jump. But for me, probably the only thing I didn't like about it is I was working really hard to keep my crafting close to my level, so that I could, not maybe from day one of being promoted, but I could craft ships that I wanted to sail in, and it was a bit of a motivating factor for me. And with the big surge that I had from effectively stored up XP when the shift came in, what's happened there is my crafting has now fallen. I would say I'm 30 days behind my leveling, which is no good. I need to get a bit closer to this fella. I'm about 30 days, so I'm just about to start crafting Trincomales, which is what I was sailing, a Trink, and I would have probably, with any luck, been just about ready to start crafting Consties. By the time I got there, I was undercrewing Consties. I mean, now I can sail a second rate. I can't craft a second rate, and I can't afford to buy a second rate. So although it's made leveling easier for everybody, personally, it's put my crafting out of kilter with my play, which I'm a bit about. But anyway, you know, new people joining the game, they'll be able to get into ships more quickly. I'm a big fan of that. You should have to sail a ship for a couple of days before you can jump into the next level one up if you're a hardcore player. I don't really like people being able to bringe through the ships. I think you don't learn. One of the beautiful things they've done with naval action, it's up there with Elite as well, is each of the ships just feels different. You know, I mean, yes, a Serb and an Essex might be just smaller, bigger versions of each other. But a Trink and a Connie and a Merc, I mean, jump in a Merc after you've been sailing a frigate for a while, and you forget how low in the water you were, you forget how low in the water your enemies were. Now you'll see there incidentally that AI sunk a lot quicker than they normally do once I'd put leaks into it, and that's just because leaks are a pain in the bum, especially when you strip to one side. So that's more or less it for Scuttlebutt. I have to say I'm very excited about the new patch. There's a whole bunch of cool stuff in there, and I'm going to make a lot more money as a trader. Oh, one of the things I hate, which I haven't mentioned, that was the last thing I meant to mention, and I think this is a fix for a problem that causes another problem. There was a bit of a funky thing where the supply and demand maths could cause enormous problems, and people were kind of exploiting it. Not exploiting it. They were maybe making more money on trading than the devs wanted. So they've now made the prices static. So no matter, in the past, if I'd have gone and bought compass wood for 520, by the time I bought, say I bought 200 tons for 520, the next 200 I bought would cost me 530, the next 200 would cost me 540. Transversely, when I went to sell it, I'd sell it for 600, well done, made a big profit, but the next 200 I'd sell would sell for 590, and then the next 200 I sell would sell for 580. They've made that static because of some variance problems that were being caused. I think that's the wrong fix. I'd rather they'd have just left that. I don't know how big the exploit problem was. Maybe it was terrible and people were billionaires or something. But I don't like that. I like a dynamic economy. But that's just me. I'm a dynamic economy type of guy. And I'll end finally with a couple of minutes on some of the hilarity in the forums and in chat. I've seen a lot of stuff about people where there's been a bad thing happen and now they want to quit. Well, let me tell you, I rolled out my brand new constitution first 10 minutes after the patch. Lesson to be learned there. Sailed it into an AI mission. Jean le Prick crashed into me, and I sank in 45 seconds flat, and it was impossible for me not to sink. It wasn't because they've remodeled leaks and that's the way it should work. It wasn't because they want to introduce ramming as a primary way of sinking a larger vessel. It's because it's knackered and there's a bug, and I'm sure they'll fix it. But within about 5 minutes of the patch rolling out, the forums were full of people quitting, rage quitting, angry, swearing. Why don't you test? The developers are testing. This is for them. Their mentality is try stuff out on us guinea pigs in the community, and then tune it. So when the game goes into full release, it has been genuinely battle tested or foolproofed, depending on how you like to think of yourself, by the community. Now I'm all right with that. I've worked in software development for a long time, and I'm an old fart as well. So I've probably got a little bit more patience. I'm all right with that. This game costs $40. For some people, that's a lot of money. I work, it's not so much a lot of money. If you don't work, it's probably your mum's money anyway, or your dad's money. $40. I went to see Batman vs Superman the other weekend. By the time I bought the requisite popcorn, frozen Coke, bag of Maltesers, and paid for me parking, I spent $40. That movie was about 2 hours long. It's hard to tell. I lost track of time. It felt like 15 hours long. And it only taught me one thing. It taught me that although I was angry that Jean le Prick had rammed me and killed me in 40 seconds, because his mum's name was Martha, everything's okay. Don't worry about it. Chill, relax. There's no need to get angry. So I just want to say, report the problems accurately to the developers in the forums through your F11. I did 5 F11s last night with bits and bobs. Have a bit of a chill pill. If, like me, you discovered that there's some horrendous bug where if you get rammed by a cutter and you use Santimissima, you're dead in a minute. Yes, that's really annoying because you've lost a Santi, and you probably are allowed to have a sweary rant. But then just don't sail your next Santi until you've seen a patch note to say it's been fixed. Give constructive input, give some suggestions as to how they can fix the BR, point out that you think the penetration on cannons is stupid. Point out you think that the static trading thing's terrible and maybe they should fix that first. That's something you'd like to prioritise on. But what we don't want is, we don't want there to be so much disproportionate QQ piss and vinegar in the forums that the developers panic and knee-jerk Care Bear or Grizzly Bear things into the game that, tilt it too much one way. So we're early access, pioneers catch arrows. The game is fantastic as it stands. It's getting better. This latest release, how much is in that? It's fantastic. There's 2 or 3 things in there right now that are just rubbish and don't work. The penetration, the ramming, the fixed trading piece. That's all rubbish. They'll fix it. Let's help them fix it. I'm looking forward to duels getting expanded. I'm hoping soon we start seeing some of the national diplomacy bits come into the game. And the other thing I'm really hoping for is that these contextual battles suck in the port scenery in port battles. I'm really looking forward to that. So that's it for this month's Scuttlebutt. It's quite a long video. You might not have listened to it all. You might have fast forwarded a bit. I hope you found it informative and mildly entertaining. I'll do another one of these. I quite like doing them, even if it's just me gibbering to myself about my thoughts on the game. Remember, if something bad happens, your mother's name was Martha. It's all good. If you like this, hit like, subscribe. The next video will be much better. And I will see you on the oceans, and I will catch you.